And there we have it, folks. Thank you for jumping on. Tom.
Hi, Chris. Thank you.
How are you doing, my man? You all right?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Very good. Yourself?
Yes, I'm not too bad. We've got a lot to cover in this one, and something that I think is very important to talk about, because not only are you coming at this from one angle, which is the parental alienation side of things, multiple sclerosis as well, which has also been thrown into the mix as well. So thank you so much for coming on this. I do appreciate you doing so. Tom, obviously you are running the YouTube channel Deleting Dad. And I came across your channel because I saw your videos where you was talking about the experiences you're going through. You're relatively new with it, but I could already tell coming off of the page, the feelings behind it, the pain, still trying to continue, but with all these things going on. Parental alienation, helps if I say it right. Parental alienation, there we go. What is that to you? What does that look like?
Well, in its definition, you know, it's a child's rejection of a non-abusive parent, non-abusive, previously loved parent, as a result of manipulation. You know, a child does not reject a non-abusive parent without manipulation. And so that's the kind of definition. Where there has been abuse, that would be described as justified estrangement, completely different, really. But so that's kind of what it, when it happened to, I didn't know it was happening to me at the time, you know, so with my daughter. And it was only, I came across this, I did it in one of my videos, I came across this infographic about parental alienation. And it kind of lodged in my brain for quite a while, and it sort of sat there. And then I started looking into it more, reading books around it. I don't, you know, I just read a lot, but reading books around it and realizing that this is what's happened to me, you know, and I've got an idea. I really feel a kind of pretty strong guilt for my daughter, because I wasn't aware. I didn't see it, you know, and I could have done something had I been aware. But while I beat myself up on that, why would you, until it's happened to you, why would you be interested? And that's part of the problem that alienated, targeted parent, we should call them. It just makes it easier than alienating and alienated. But a targeted parent, part of the problem for them is that this becomes so much of themselves, this trauma that they're going through, that they talk to everyone, but the world doesn't really see it. You know, they can't, nobody else gets it unless they've been through it themselves. You know,
Absolutely. I'm just looking now because is it this image? I'm going to share it on the screen. Hang on a second. I just want to make sure I've got the right one. Is it this one here that you're talking about?
No.
It's not. But
no,
I can see on here though. There's things on here that are basically what it is. Like for example,
I put it in one of my videos on the walk-in video where I was going to get an MOT sorted.
Yeah.
And it's a kid, like a teenager, I assume, but you can't see them because they've got a hoodie on, and you've got all speech bubbles around it. And the title was Parental Alienation. I'd never seen those two words together. I didn't know anything about it. Then I started looking into it, you know, and that's what really set me off on it. And I thought, I've got to do something. I've been thinking this relates back to the MS, you know, I've been thinking about this for so many times. I've been looking for some way that I can help people. There was a time where I was feeling really crap with MS, and I was on this dog walk. I live in the middle of nowhere, so I'm down this track, and I turned to the sky. I'm not, at that point, I wasn't that religious. And I turned to the sky and I sort of said, "You got to show me what I'm supposed to do." And I thought that I was doing all sorts of hippie stuff for MS. You know, I was walking barefoot, picking hedgerow medicine and, you know, a pocket full of crystals. And I think I thought that that's what I needed to do to help people with that. Then I was kind of, and I'll say, gifted this parental alienation. And I realized, because it happened to me, and I realized that actually that's what I want to do. That's what I need to do, is to help those dads. There's 14 men every day in this country that off themselves, you know, every single day in this tiny country. If that were the other way around, I mean, I'll say it straight, you know, if it were women, 14 a day, we'd have a day off work, we'd all be wearing a particular coloured ribbon, and we'd all be asking what we can do better from. But for men, it just doesn't matter. We're just,
it's disgusting, really, isn't it?
It's totally disgusting.
One of the things it says on this one, even though this wasn't the one you was looking at, it says warning sign of parental alienation. It says here, acting hurt or sad when the child enjoys their time with the other parent, trying to make the child feel guilty for their positive experiences. I mean, that's it right there, isn't it? That really is.
Quizzing them. When they come back from you, they'll quiz them, and it's so easy to do that. Look, children are vulnerable, and oh no, they're not being manipulated. It's like, do you think that nobody's manipulating children? We do it in a way in good parenting. We might say, without knowing it, we'll say, oh, if you do that, it's this, and we're kind of for their behavior or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think for children, it's an evolutionary strategy that they will bond to their biological parents, and they know this in themselves. If you lose one of those, think about us as cavemen. We're still the same, in our own kind of psychology and our physiognomy. It just changes slightly because of the difference in our world. But children don't reject a non-abusive parent. Stepdads are the statistics on them, that's terrible. They are not the same. Do you know what I mean? They are a real danger because they don't have a biological connection to that child, So
yeah, I mean, what this says to us though is that if you can egg the pudding a little bit just to make it so it looks like that the child is afraid or like that for whatever reasons, then they've got the power then, haven't they? Because they can see they are scared. They don't want to go spend time with them.
I mean, an alienating parent hates the targeted parent more than they love their own children. So it's about hurting you. It's not about the children, I think basically it's a bizarre, I can't understand it, but there's no thought for the children, the damage that's done to them. What happens to these kids when they look at the studies from this? They are so much more, and I have to be careful, don't I, with YouTube, how I phrase it, but they're so much more likely to do harm to, personally to them, and mental health issues as they get older, depression, offing themselves ideation. It's massive. It's terrible, the damage that's happened. And then for the targeted parent too, when they look at this, when they look at the studies, the damage that is done to parents like us, or to all of these, they see a damage in them which is what they expect to see in prisoners of war, victims of torture, somebody who's gone through the bereavement of a child, and us. It's pretty grim company. But they see the same things.
That's the thing, though, Tom. That's what I liken it to. And this is now my situation is a little bit different to yours. So I have mine every 2 weeks, so I still get to see mine. But like I said to you before the recording started, I don't get any info in between. So when I drop them off on a Sunday and I drive off, it is like they've died, because then they just disappear from existence then for 2 weeks until I have them again. So I can understand that feeling of it's like a bereavement, because it kind of is.
It's a what's the thing for it? What's the thing? What's the ambiguous grief? You haven't actually lost that child. That child isn't dead. I feel so sorry for those people who do lose the child, but what you're going through is an ambiguous grief where it's still, you know what I mean? There is no closure to it. It goes on and on and on. You're caught in this trap, you're caught in this loop. You're never going to come out of it. And how does one ever kind of say, I've got to just draw a line under that? It's your children. How are you ever going to arrive at a place where you say, oh yeah, it's time to move on? And because that is what the world, people who haven't been through this and don't know, oh, well, you probably should just get over that. How are you going to get over it? But that's it. So
Yeah.
I think that alienated parents, targeted parents, they don't have that. If your child, I mean, awful for these people who do lose a child. And if that happened, all the world around you is going to say, "Oh, look at that poor bloke. That's that poor bloke who lost his kid," and they'd see that. But as it is now, what happens in the world is they say, "Well, it must be something you've done," but there isn't. I kind of, and so there's this. I don't. It's a horrible thing. It's a really damaging thing.
I don't know if you saw it or not, but I did put up a post about it was a post on Facebook I saw, and it was one of those, it kind of gave you a bit of a taster of what we're dealing with. Okay, so let me just find it. So this was a person who said the following. So she's not keeping the kids from you. The consequences of your own actions are, when you choose to be toxic, disrespectful, or harmful, you create distance. And that distance isn't about punishment, it's about protection. Kids deserve peace. They deserve safety. They deserve to grow up surrounded by people who genuinely love and respect them, not people who bring chaos, manipulation, or pain to them, or even bring physical adult altercations around them. It's easier to say she's keeping the kids from us than it is to face the truth. Your own behavior closed that door. Every action has a ripple effect, and the way you treat people determines the access you have to them and their children. At the end of the day, protecting kids from toxicity isn't being mean or unfair, it's being a good parent. And if I've ever heard someone describing themselves in a post, it's that, because they are everything that they've just described.
I've had the same. You still getting audio through there? I've just had to turn my sound off because I got a notification on my phone, and I don't want to ruin the video. Yeah, I get exactly the same sort of comments, and it's always, I'll tell you what, look, we can say it's not a gendered thing, but 83% of confirmed parental alienation cases, the alienating parent is the mother. That's a gendered thing, but it doesn't fit into our gynocentric world where, believe all women never do anything wrong. It's like, yeah, really? Do you know what I mean? Really? I don't think that is the case. Of course it isn't. But so I would say that all of those comments that you get there, I bet you it is, it'll be from a woman. It's like they're really, whatever. That out of biological parents, if a biological parent, so not step parents, that's a whole different dangerous ball game. But biological parents, if a child is offed by a biological parent, it is more likely that it's the mother than it is the father. Now that'll be
true?
Yes, but that might be because, I mean, you've got to factor in, there'll be an element of, with our kind of broken nuclear families, which is pretty par for the course, the women will be having more time, the mothers will be having more time with the children. But yeah, they are more likely than the fathers.
That's crazy, because if you think about the narrative that there is about men, society, and all that, men are the violent ones. Men's are the ones that have got to be more harmful. But then that says the opposite, then, doesn't it?
It does. And, men have a physical power where a woman doesn't. We were saying about this, that we have this egalitarian idea that, oh, everyone can be the same. They're not. They never are. But so men will have this physical power. There'll be more kind of, there'll be that physical violence that can be there from a man. We're not factoring in, what about those men that are offering themselves? What was going off? Because there's a domestic abuse in relational aggression, which is all done quietly, and it's done just to destroy. It's a destruction of your reputation, and then these blokes, they can't deal with it. If you factor that in, and then I want to know what the body count is, because I think it is pretty skewed one way.
Absolutely.
And nobody should be blamed for. We shouldn't be looking and saying, "Oh, this." Somebody said in a comment with like the Deleting Dad project that, they should be tried. These mothers, these wives, or whatever, should be tried for the murder. It's like, no, because that's not what it is. The guy's still done it himself, But it is an aspect. It is definitely an aspect. When they look, we have same-sex marriages, When they look at same-sex marriages, any kind of domestic abuse obviously is terrible, and it's awful that happens, but it does happen. Heterosexual couples, you have it at one particular level, you know, that's the way it is, you know. The lowest level of domestic abuse is two men together, you know. The highest is two women together. But we need to talk about men, is that, yeah, by a long way, by a long way. So, but it's always framed as, oh, we need to talk about men. We need to talk about men. It's like, that's not really what the statistics are showing, you know.
Well, speaking of statistics, I'm just going to bring up another bit on here. Another statistics. So, I mean, this is no different than what we were already talking about. Let me just add it to the stage. So, which one am I showing? That's the one. Yeah. So, only 35% of British women under 25 hold a positive view of men, with just 11% expressing a very positive look. So 11% out of everyone that they surveyed. Women under 30 are 3 times more likely to hold a negative view of men compared to women over 30. Young women attribute their negative perception to young men's perceived overemphasis on sexual motivation and lack of interest in political issues. Okay. So because you're not political or not interested in the right politics, bye-bye. Basically.
You know, Marxism and feminism are just the same. It's exactly the same. It's just that one's done along class lines and one's done along sex lines. But it's the same. And when you look at this, do you know what I mean? It's a pretty poisonous thing that has been happening, you know, to people. And seeing that statistic there, you know, and what did we say earlier? What was it? 31% of women have a negative opinion of men. But when you look at the men against the women, you know, what their opinion of it, because have you got that there as well?
I haven't anymore, but it was 72% of men have a positive, positive opinion of women. So it was over double.
Over double, yeah. You know, I don't know. It's all been whipped up, really. It's a very destructive thing for our society. You know, that it's gone like that way. Our birth rate is completely bottoming out.
It is, but the thing is, right, as men, we are still in a position, like we've mentioned, and I'm going to go into with you now, where we maybe ignore red flags from women for whatever reason. And you were saying to me that, yes, there was a lot of red flags with your ex. So I kind of want to delve into that. Okay. So obviously the whole theme behind this is parental alienation. So what was your situation? So, I mean, how long were you with your ex, by the way?
Well, my daughter is 11, so I've known her for 11 years and a few months, probably a couple of weeks. But so I would say, how long was I with her? 3 years. Well, we weren't living together because she'd got other children. She's had 4 children by 3 different dads, and she'd alienated all of them. But so she'd already got these 2
flags, mate.
So we've got one there, which is a pretty big one. But you know, yeah. So whatever it was, you know, there was so many red flags. Do you know what I mean? But it was okay. You know, you were just kind of going along with stuff. But so we never really lived together at that point.
Okay.
Then when she got pregnant with my son, I was at the same time, at the same time, I'd bought a house and moving out of the city into the countryside. So at that point, she came with me, pregnant with my son, and she came and lived with me for, I think, maybe 2 years. And then, but it was almost to the day that it was 2 years. So I reckon that there's possibly, I've never had any real help or anything. I've never had a council house, but I reckon there's probably 2 years you've got to live in an area for 2 years, because it was almost to the day. So she'd worked it all out. She's a businesswoman. She's a really good. She's a way better. I've had my own business for 14 years, but she is a way better businesswoman than I am a businessman. It's just that her business is children, you know.
Yes. Attractive, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes, because that's half the problem, isn't it? Isn't it? It's just like,
Yeah, but
okay,
I mean,
I'll get on with
it was
it.
just,
They're quite
it was all
crap.
so easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It was all so easy
yeah.
that I was still living my kind of like, whatever, you know, my life in the city, and it was fine. And then I'd just go there every weekend or meet up or whatever, you know. So there was a lot of red flags, and the fact that she'd had some children before and done exactly the same thing,
So did
you know.
you sort of like spend time with these children then as well?
Well, her two older ones.
Yeah.
Her oldest never met her dad. Nobody ever wants to say what his name is. Nobody. That's a real secret. But she
It's
told me when.
Voldemort, isn't it? It's Voldemort.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it should not be named.
Voldemort.
Yeah.
But because my ex, she said, I always used to say to her, now her, so she had this oldest one that she, you know, no one knows the dad's name, but she always told me, oh yeah, but he always paid his maintenance. Like that was the sum total of what I've seen. The birth certificate is not even on that. He's on as unknown, but she knows his name. Now I'm told that her oldest, who's really damaged, she's really quite a poisonous person, you know. But look, she was a kid, and my ex told me that she once found a drawer full of letters that this little girl had written to a dad she just imagined, you know, loads of letters that she wrote. I mean, that's awful that should happen.
That is so
Then
bad.
yeah, it's awful. And then she and I felt sorry for her, you know. I did. When my daughter was coming, it was my suggestion that my daughter should have a double-barreled name, so that that girl, who now is a woman,
Mm.
that she wouldn't be so much outside of everything. That's a
Which, well,
mistake.
I mean, that's an honourable thing to do, and I can see the logic behind it, and that's where the empathy then comes in.
Yeah, now my daughter's at school, from what I've heard, my daughter has dropped my name from her double-barreled name.
She hasn't.
Yep. So no, she hasn't. Of course she hasn't. Legally, she can't as well. But can you see? This is another one of the 17 behaviors, alienating behaviors. Have you seen that? That's worth looking at. That is Dr. Amy Baker and Fine. They did a book. I can't remember what it's called. And yeah, Baker and Fine, 17 alienating behaviors that contribute to the rejection of a targeted parent.
Here we go. All right, let me just find it. Yeah, because I mean,
so also dropping the moniker dad. So my name with Nana, who was actually, you know, section. She's possibly like the mother lode of all of this. So they all talk about me, my name, my first name, and my surname, which I'm not going to say, obviously, because it's about protecting my children's, you know, identity. But they call me they don't call me dad. They call me Tom Smith. You know, that's it. So and my son, I think he's a different kettle of fish. Really, he's got to the point where he's just going, "That's my dad." Do you know what I mean? So,
well,
fair
yeah,
play.
I mean that's how they sort of they try and break the bond, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely. And they'll make out that you just, anything that you do, you just don't love them. That's the key bit. Now, with my daughter, I wasn't aware that it was even happening until it was too late.
Here we go. Here we go. 13, referring to the other parent by first name rather than mum or dad.
Yeah.
Referring
and changing that. And when a child is,
yeah,
when a child is electing to change their name at school or whatever, you know, that's another one.
Yeah,
that's
changing the child's name to remove the association with the other parent. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So not only getting rid of the title of mum, dad, but changing the name, but then with the new parent, the step parent, referring to them as mum or dad.
Yeah. The thing you will find, the more you look into it as well, is that these alienating parents are not very imaginative. They're all pretty much doing the same thing. So you can you can sort of anticipate what they're going to do next, you know.
Absolutely. Well, so you was in this relationship. I mean, you must have assumed that for large swathes of it that everything was fine. I'm assuming, otherwise it probably would have come apart sooner than it did. Or
No,
were
not
you
really.
just looking the other way? Was that what we're saying?
Well, you'd got in so deep then, with kids and stuff. I'd never leave my post. I was a dad then. That was my most serious job. That's what it was. I couldn't just be, it was all my focus was on that then.
Mm,
And so I would never have left my post. Like I've said in one of my videos recently, that I tell you what, I'd describe myself in this house. This is a house I bought as a family home, but I bought it on my own. So she didn't have any, there was no claim to that, which is kind of lucky, but I tried to put her on a mortgage because I wanted her to feel more like it was a family home.
mhm.
I'd got everything, mortgage in principle, all this. And I said to the mortgage advisor, can you put her on a mortgage? He said, no, the lenders have said that if she goes on, even though I had a big deposit, if she goes on, we won't lend you the money, but we can't know what it is. So whatever that was, her being on it wiped out like 30 odd grand of a deposit.
Well, do you know
Um,
what? I watched that video of yours, and the one thing that really stuck to me was when you was talking about having to redecorate the room.
yeah, this room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you were basically saying it's a bit like you've mentioned earlier, when you've got a parent that's lost a child and they keep the room exactly as it was. It's almost like a time capsule.
Mm. I
Must have
couldn't
been hard you doing that. Must have been difficult you changing it up.
painting the walls, taking things out and changing it around and painting the walls. You know, you having to stop and you were crying and then you'd carry on, and it took me a long time to do it really. But I thought I'm paying for this 3-bedroom house and I'm not using this, I should probably use that. And it was that it's all the psychological thing of it, of saying, I'm gonna take those things down off the walls and I'm gonna do this. It's what it means to you, it's the
Yeah.
psychological side of it, the weight of that. So I'd describe myself. I said this to lots of people that essentially I'm a kind of like a weird caretaker. I'm
Mm.
just here, I'm mowing the grass, I'm tidying the rooms, I'm hoovering up. And I've had a will in place for years. It's like I'm just hanging around so that, do you know what I mean? So you can hand it over to someone else. It's like a weird caretaker. That's how I describe myself.
So how long has it been since you have seen her?
My daughter, I
Mhm.
think it's about 2.5 years. It could be getting close to 3 years now. But I never give up on it. I will never give up on it because we all have, as we go through different stages in our life. A mediator said this to me as well, that she will one day realize and she'll want to come back to you and she'll look to think. And I said, yeah, but that's only from what I'd read in various books, that it's when the child gets to an age where they are away from the family. So they get to
Yeah.
be a young adult and they're setting up, with their own life, that they're free from what is essentially a hostage dynamic. So once they're free of that, that's when they might do it. I said this to the mediator and she said, no, 15. Said it very clear and very specifically, 15. So all our stages, no children stay children forever.
No.
And they begin to, and my children are bright, it's, I don't know where they got it from, but they're bright kids, and especially
Mm.
my daughter. She's ever so bright. She always has been. And I don't know why I said especially my daughter. My son is showing some really interesting things now, but I would say that she is well equipped to start questioning things. And I think that's part of what I'm doing with Deleting Dad. Really,
Well, isn't
is that
there a
one day
thing
she's
with
going to look it up.
with teenagers and all that? I mean, there's always the fact that they want to rebel against the parents anyway.
Yeah.
And they want to hurt the parents. So what's one way of hurting the mum is to go, I don't want anything to do. I'm going to want to spend time with dad. You
Yeah.
know, you can see it happening because it's what did everyone do when they were a teenager? They wanted to piss off their parents, didn't they?
Yeah.
So, but also they're in that weird position between being a child and not quite an adult, and they're trying to figure
Puberty is a
everything out.
massive stress on
It
people
is.
at that stage of our lives. We all go through that. And I think moving from primary to high school, they meet new friends. They might lose old friends, and
Mhm.
their new friends might start asking them questions like, "Well, where's your dad?" And
Mm.
that's when they start to to question these things. The alienating parent they're in a pretty precarious situation, really, because the false narrative, how they're presenting it to some won't be the same as how they're presenting it to others. Every one of these lies, when you base your world, your presentation is all a lie. You've got to maintain that all the time, and you can't slip up and you can't contradict it, and that's what it is. I think it's, what do they say? The truth can walk naked, but if you're lying, you've got to constantly be tending that.
I also know that the alienating parent, they're playing the short game, because it's the short game. It's short-term wins. It's the, you didn't get to see them then. I've just done this. I've just done that. I'm playing the long game. I'm in it for the long haul, which is why I'm not saying anything. I'm not slagging her off. I'm not doing this. I'm looking for that time down the road, whenever it may be, when it's like, this is what I had to deal with. And then your child is like, my God, because it'll come out in the end. It all comes out in the wash in the end. Now, I'm not in a position where I'm going to talk to about it, because they're still too young. But obviously, at an age appropriate time, it's a conversation that I know is going to happen.
It's a real challenge. It's very hard. You've got to not kind of involve them, and you've got to not be, bitching about the other parent, the alienating parent. It's so difficult. It really is.
As you want to, as much as
you do. You really want to just say, your mum's a fucking bitch, of course.
Yes.
But you can't, or you can't. You've just got to kind of go along with it. And we will always, all of us will at some point make that mistake. We will. Because that's inevitable that it will happen. And you can't beat yourself up too much. You're under great pressure, but you've got to be conscious of that, and to think, no, those children just want to be children. They're in childhood. Childhood is such a special thing, and it's so short. And, and they need to just have that space to just be kids, not be worrying about this. I try not to talk about with health stuff. And that's really hard. But, I try not to do that, because I think I don't want to put any kind of pressure on, any weight on my children, that they've got to carry that weight. Both of my children, when she was pregnant with my daughter, my first, I remember praying, and I said to God, if there's got to be a problem, you load it on me, And when she went into hospital to have my son, I was staying here looking after my daughter. And, I went up to the top of the garden here, and I made the same prayer. And you know what? There's a part of me that feels like, did I carry that weight? Is that what this MS is? And then that gives me a kind of real kind of satisfaction and a pleasure that I carry.
Well, tell me a bit about that. I mean, obviously, we'll look into the relationship a little bit more, but how did this come about? I mean, it's not just one day you think, oh, I think I've got MS. I mean, how did this sort of materialize for you?
This won't make her look that good, but no. So my when my daughter was little, so it was about like 10 years, 9 or 10 years ago. And I took my ex and my daughter on a holiday to Whitby, and we were staying in a cottage. We were going on one of these tour buses, and I felt like I couldn't hear things. I wasn't picking up hearing. I had like a blocked ear. So my ex was putting olive oil in my ear, all this. I went to the cooker hood, and I was trying to press the buttons, and I was missing. And I thought, this is weird, and it all ended up with going to an optician, and, pardon the pun, but they see it, and they were bringing in people to have a look. And then next thing you know, you're in an MRI, stuffed into MRI. So that would be when I got a putative diagnosis. I was feeling better then, and I essentially told the neurologist, no, I'm fine. I'm not doing any of that. Goodbye. And I left. She came to me with all those things. But then she continued to deny that I had got it, because it would make her look bad,
Yeah.
So that gave her a kind of a green light. But I've lived with it. I've had my own business for like 14 years or whatever, and I've lived with this, and I've just struggled through. It's only recently that it's got to a point where I can't keep doing that. you know. So you know, it's, and I work at height, you know, and it's getting dangerous, you know, on cherry pickers and what have you.
Well,
You
that's
know,
the thing. How does it affect you? For anyone who doesn't know about it, how does it affect you on a day to day?
yeah, it's a weird condition, and it's different for everybody, you know. So for myself, you'll see me kind of, you know, sometimes somebody in the past has thought that I've got like a nervous tick. I always have perpetually unbearably dry eyes, you know, and it's
Oh
affected
wow!
my eyesight. My feet, I have a problem with my feet. I went up 2 shoe sizes. I had to go to biomechanics, and they tested it, and they were like, "Yeah, you got to go." My feet are kind of flattening out, and they're quite painful, you know, feet, knees,
Right.
and in my back. You know, I've had an MRI recently, and they've got a lot of active lesions, like in my back and in my left hemisphere of my brain. So left hemisphere operates the right side of your body,
Yeah.
and that makes sense. I knew everything that from my own body where it was. So because my problems will be on the right side more than it is on the left, you know. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's day to day, and like a fatigue like you wouldn't believe a lot of the time, you know. It's just like a bone crushing tired, you know, and
Yeah, because
nobody can really.
it's degenerative, isn't it? It's sort of a continuous
Yeah,
degenerative condition, isn't it?
it is, yeah. And I'm doing pretty well, you know, when you've
Mm.
all things considered, you know, I think I'm doing pretty well. Um,
Yeah.
how it could be, you know, for other people. And I've like, well, I've done every kind of hippie crap you can imagine, and I, you know, and I take it absolutely, like doctors are terrified of it. That how much vitamin D3 I take every day, you know. Um, but it seems to be doing okay. I'm not changing it, you know. I'm not dead from the stuff I'm taking, and you
Yeah.
know,
I,
it's
gue- I guess though it's one of those things with most things with mindset is that on those days where you're okay, you're probably thinking, I'm getting on okay with
yeah,
this. But on those days when you're already down and you're
yeah,
already, I suppose that's probably when it creeps in more.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you've got. I'll tell you what, you've got to. I think that the stress and the abuse that I'd suffered for years without knowing it, you know, when neurologists will say, "Oh, we don't know what causes it," it's like, I know what caused mine. I know her name. You know, I know. So I'd say to young guys who work with me, I'm like, look, you've got to be careful with who you choose to share your life with, you know, because that person who lays next to you is going to kill you faster than your smoking will, you know. So I think that if the body keeps the score, you know, if we're surrounded by these things, you know, these people that are negative to us, I try and teach my son. I always say to him, you know, a few different things. I say to him, look, some of the things I say to you, you don't, you're young, you're not going to understand that. I said, well, you know, but don't. If there's someone who you think isn't, you know, got a friend and they're not good for you, find a different friend. Don't
Yeah.
fall out with them. Don't fight them. Just find a different friend. And I think
Mm.
that's the same for all of it. You know, we I think that humans are. I think we're all a pretty fragile creature. You know, we're pretty fragile. There's a real weight that comes with consciousness. You know, and I think
Mm.
that stress is a killer. And I think that the stress that I was under really caused what I've got. Now I would have a genetic susceptibility towards it from my dad's side. He didn't have MS or anything, but his my cousin on his twin's daughter does have MS. So she's a stress head too, you know. But I think, you know, that you've got a susceptibility to it. It's quite interesting, this epigenetics, you know, that we have this genetics. If someone says to you, oh, it's just genetic, there's nothing you can do about that, then, you know, that's a pretty hopeless situation. But if you look into Bruce Lipton and what is essentially epigenetics, that you've got these genes, but something happens to switch that on. You know, something happens in your life to switch that on. Um, when they look at people who develop multiple sclerosis, I saw a study that there was one study where they asked the people what was happening in your life when you first got symptoms, and you'd have things like divorce, lost a house, you know, I'd lost a job, bereavement, you know. So you'd have these
That's
big
all in
stress
there, then,
events.
isn't it?
Yeah, big
It's
stress
all.
events.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the epigenetics of it, so while you've got a susceptibility to it, something happens to trigger that, to switch that on. So if something happens that switch it on, Bruce Lipton's idea and other people's ideas is, and his book is The Biology of Belief, that if there's something that can switch it on, then there could be something that can switch it off again. You know, um, it's I know that stress makes my condition way worse. You know, it's you can feel it come on. Do you know what I mean? So
Well,
I
it's
try
such
and
a
avoid it.
killer. I mean, if you was to look at all the medical conditions that are either caused by or made worse by stress,
Yeah,
it's a long list. It's a long
it's a
bloody
killer.
list. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it is, and I think we're all living in a soup of stress. You know, I think we're all living like that, whether we've got something big happening in their life or not. You know, I think just generally in our environment, it's like that. You know, part of it, you know, one of the videos that I did is about just how much we get out of the technology now, but how much of it is, what is it using us for, and how much are we actually, you know, there's terrible things that are happening. We wouldn't have known about that before, but now we're
No.
clued up. You know, I don't know. I remember a thing. I'd always had this like idea that what 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 damage has having mirrors. Glass is relatively recent thing. So what effect does having mirrors around us have on us? You know, that we see ourselves where we didn't before. Before that, we might have seen ourselves in a puddle. You know, which is a Narcissus. You know, falling in love with himself,
Yes. Yeah.
his own reflection. But so you look at it and you don't really think about it. You know, how much is all of this technology? How much harm is it doing us? It certainly opens things up for us, but is it using us too in a way that's harming us?
Well, I think, when you look at it, we've been gained so much knowledge and information and
Mm.
news from across the world. Like you said, things we would have never known about before. And we always have to
Yeah.
compare it to 100 years ago, 200 years ago, when people just used to, if they were in the countryside, worked the land. That was about
Yeah.
it. That's all they
And they
had.
didn't know
They
what
had
they
their
looked like.
family unit. That was it.
You know,
No,
they
but
didn't
not
know.
only
They didn't have
that,
a mill.
they had structure to their day. It was a day of hard work, which a lot of people now would go, well, I couldn't do that. Well, that was what they were used to. That meant that their life then had meaning and it had value, and because they were then providing for their family as well. And they had a family for a start. There was nothing attacking the family setup. It was a hard time, but it was a simple time. And I think sometimes that simplicity allows the brain to just relax
Yeah.
and not have the adrenal glands pumping out, stress hormones all the time. Do you find then that when you're in a position where you are able to fully de-stress yourself, that you find it help alleviate some of the symptoms that you find?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Well, I think the other way, when you're going through stress, you feel that knock on, you know, further down the line. One of the things that I think really, which has been a problem recently, but I really benefit from. There's lots of times where I think I feel too crap to work, but if I do push myself and I do work, you know, I do feel much better. Sitting around makes it much worse. But how much longer I'll be able to. This is the thing with the YouTube. It's giving me a focus, you know, and getting me doing something. Because you don't want to just be sat in bed. You're just going to get worse and worse, you know. So yeah, I'm not complaining, and I'm doing okay. All things considered, you know, it's a pretty savage condition to a lot of people. I remember being up a ladder working on something. This is years ago, and an old fella comes walking past, and as he walked past, he said, "Oh, I wish I were that fit." And I thought, and I'm there, and I thought, I'm not, you know, but I look it.
No.
It's like, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, you don't. It doesn't always. It's not always apparent to people that I've got a problem. You know, it's the psychological thing as well that, you know, I've got a walking stick, and I can't. I said to my son, I went, "How would you feel if I had a walking stick?" He went, "Yeah, cool." Do you know what I mean? So he's okay, but I just wanted to ask him because I don't want to be that. I want to be that strong dad, you know.
Yeah,
But
you don't want to assume this role of the sickly father that's not
yeah, I
able
don't
to
want
do
to.
it. No.
It's not so much. it's the death of my old self. You know, that's the bit that I find really hard, is that my old self is, you know, I was with this girl for a while, not that long ago, and I said to her, and she'd known me years ago when we were younger, and we were together for about 8 to 9 months or something. And I said to her, you know what, Ruby, I just want my old, I said her name, I shouldn't have said that, but I just want my old self back. And she said something, I'll never forgot, she went, we all want our old selves back, Tom.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, that's the key, you know.
We
You know, being 46 is shit. It's a lot shitter than it was at 30. You know, it is.
Well, I ain't being funny, Tom, but when we talk about that, then who was your old self? Who is the old self that you're missing?
Well, he was stronger. He was stronger. I used to be, you know, I used to be working creative stuff. You know, I used to do a lot of things for Arts Council England, and, you know, as an artist, and got to travel. And I think all of that, you get with the wrong person and all of what you are is eroded, really, bit by bit, and you begin to lose it. So I'd say I've lost that old self, you know, and you can't really go back to it. But I'd say that my old self he was a lot more fun. He was a lot more kind of jokey, and, you know, he was known for that. And just kind of secure, you know, secure in himself. And I feel like, you know, that's eroded, really, you know, that it just begins to, everything has to change, you know, that you've got this new self. And it's not about like, oh, you can't, you know, coming to terms with this new self. It's the loss of my old self. It's the death of that fella, you know. That's what I struggle with, really. And it's the psychological thing. I would say, they put out a video the other day, and it's saying that, you know, if you're going through things, you know, as a man, reach out to groups, you know, don't kind of go down. And I hit rock bottom, and I ended up looking for groups, and I ended up joining, and I've been going for quite a while, to a men's group and meet up with them. And I've made some really good friends. One of the guys that I've met there has got FND, functional neurological disorder. And I told him, and it's so weird because I've lived
functional neurological. What's that?
It's an odd thing. Functional neurological disorder. He's in a mobility scooter. He's on, you know what I mean, and he's struggling. But if you go and see him at home, where he feels secure and safe and everything, he's a different man. He's completely different. It's really strange, and it's from trauma that causes it. You know, again, stress. You know, it's awful. So I'd kind of been aware of FND anyway, but there's not any. It's not like, say, with MS, where it is actually like they do MRIs and they can see that. With FND, they can't. This is a psychological problem, and it takes a long time, whether they can turn it around or not, you know.
That's mad. So you've got somebody who literally can be, whether, I don't know if okay is the word, but they're a different person than if they're in a different situation, they need a mobility scooter.
Most of the time when I went around to his house, I'll tell you what, so for so many years, this is the other thing as well, I've not denied that I've got this problem, but I've just never told anybody. So even people who've been working for me, and they're sat next to me in the van, the most they've ever known is that I've got a savage autoimmune condition, and I get tired, and, you know, I need you to step up a little bit or whatever. But I never really told them what it was. Once I was working with one of the subcontractors, and I just blurted it out, and then that's been it. Then, you know, that I've said it, and then it's become kind of that people know. When I joined this men's group, at the start of it, we all go around the table, and you have to be. It's just listening. You know, everybody talks, no cross talking, and we just catch up with things. I'd been going to it for ages, and every time it was going around, I'd be thinking to myself, I'm just going to tell them. I'm just going to tell them. I'm just going to tell them. Then it gets to me and I go, yeah, great week, you know, and I don't tell them. And then this one time we came round and I just said, I've never told you what I've got, but this is what I've got, you know. And this guy with FND, he comes over to me, do you know what I mean? And the support that I got from that group has been wonderful. And from kind of opening that door and letting it blurt out, it's kind of like I keep telling everyone, you know, I think I've carried that weight like a shame for too long. And now I just think, yeah, because people wouldn't know that you've got MS, you know.
Well, no, and also how many people would probably even know what that is, you know, because people are probably aware of it but don't know what it is and how it affects people and that. Is that linking back to missing your old self? Because if you're admitting to them that you've got MS, that you're then not that person anymore, you're someone new.
Yeah. I think that's been a massive problem. Right? It's like with this stick, you know, I can't bring myself to use it. You know, I can't. It's like I struggle with it, you know, because I don't want a weakness, you know. I don't want that. I've always been independent, very independent person. You know, I've got my own business for a long time. You know, I bought my own house. I've always just lived my life like that. You know, I've never, and suddenly I have to admit to myself that I can't keep doing that. You know, but
What would it mean if you did?
What if I did?
Just start using it.
Yeah. I don't think it would. I think it's, you know, it's fine.
It's fucking badass as well, mate. It's like, you know, especially
if
you're sharp at the end of it.
Not the one I got. I went to cancer research and got some crap that they were selling. But I think now I've told all those guys at that group, you know, it's definitely changed. You know, it's made me feel. And the guy with FND, he said to me, "Do you want to come out to mine?" He texted me, and I was like, "Yeah." So I went and saw him. That's how I know how different he is when he's at home. And he gave me a sticky ad, you know. And I think this is my thing. If blokes are going through anything, if you're struggling with it, you know, men are really, it's 14 men every day in this tiny country that off themselves. So if you're going through that, do you know what I mean? Reach out, find what's in your locality and find those groups, because I've got so much out of that. I've made friends with blokes, and they'll say, and it's all just men, and they'll say, oh, one guy, he said, he's younger, and he goes, I'm going to come and see you tomorrow. I was like, all right, yeah, fine. You know, and I get some biscuits in, and he comes around. We ended up having, and then I went round to his and met his missus, and you just think, what a lovely thing. Because parental alienation, and it can isolate you really badly, you know, and nobody wants to hear about it. Everybody's only ever concerned about their thing. That's just it in life, you know. People will say to you, oh, hi, how are you? But they don't really want an answer for it. You just have to go, yeah, you know, and that's just nature.
It's pleasantries, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I bought a house in the middle of nowhere. So you're isolated in that, you know, and I just thought, this is rock bottom. I've got to do something. And I joined that group, and I'm so grateful to those. I'm so pleased that I joined that group and the friends that I've made from it. So I would say anybody who's going through this sort of stuff, you know, don't suffer it alone. You know, get out there and meet other people. There's lots of us. There are lots of us.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that's really become apparent to me ever since starting this, is that I'll get people message me or email me and say, oh, I'm going through this. And I love that. It's not I love the fact that they're going through it. I love the fact that someone has reached out, because I don't care if you're in America or Australia or whatever like that. Sometimes just talking helps. Just releasing that pressure valve is what people need. Because as I've mentioned, I know I'll keep talking about this ad infinitum before, but my industry is the funeral industry. So I've seen the other side of it, what the person who's committed the act doesn't get to see. I get to see the family. I get to see the children. I get to see the effect it has on others. It's not good. It's not good at all.
You mean in terms of them offering themselves when you seen that?
Yeah, well, the fan, you know, and seeing the
or just generally
deal with it
in grief, yeah.
Well, especially if it's somebody who's decided to end it all. Okay. For whatever reason that might be, I've seen the family. I've seen what it then does, because we're
not ending our trauma. We are not ending our pain. We're passing it on to someone else. Yeah, and that's something to think about. Do you know what I mean? If anyone thinks we're not, it's not going to stop there. It's passed down to our kids. You know, and you know, as parents, we are keen to, you know, we want to carry that weight so our children don't have to. You know,
absolutely, because I'll tell you what, it's not good. It's not good, and I've seen it, and I've seen the the horrendous, like, if only, like, because then people will go, well, maybe they should have said it when they were alive. Maybe they did, but the thing is, when you're in that moment, you are just not thinking clearly. You're thinking you're doing everyone a favor.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, Tom, if we go back to the relationship itself, I mean, there were obviously some issues that led to it coming to an end. Okay, so
There's never any arguing, no nothing. But it was just, look, I think I was an alienated parent before my daughter was even conceived. You know, I think that was just the way it was. It's about getting free houses, free stuff, you know, and I was just a sperm donor, you know. So I would say that there wasn't anything really in the relationship at all. There kind of wasn't a relationship. I would tell you what, when COVID happened, I had kind of my own things about what was happening. And I remember talking on the phone to my mum, bless her, and she said, "What does I've got?" And I nearly said her name. What does she think about this? You know, because I was saying what I thought about it to my mum, and she said, "What does she think about this?" Yeah, and I stopped for this second, and I went, "Mum, I don't know what she thinks about anything." It just dawned on me that I don't know what she thinks about anything. I don't. It's such a weird. How can you be like that? I always say I could never be a spy. They wouldn't need to get me drunk on vodka. They wouldn't need to tie me to a chair. They just asked me something. I'd spill my guts on everything. You know.
Yeah.
In the end, they'd be like, "Jesus, can you just shut him up? He's, you know."
Yeah, he's told us too much now. We don't want this.
Yeah. He's took the legs off of hind legs off a donkey. So, but it's a very particular personality that never. It's so strange. You know, I don't know anything about her. You know,
it was almost like you were coexisting in the same space, but in different realities.
Yeah, not really. I was sleeping in a spare room. I bought the house, but no, just accepting of it.
Spare room.
In the spare room. It's junk room full of crap. Until I've done it up, you know.
Until, you know, when you're in that, what's going through your head? Because surely you must be thinking to yourself, it's my house.
When my sister heard that, we didn't have any physical touch. What is it? Is it touch starvation? Didn't have any physical contact for twice in 3 years, I think it was. Twice. And my sister, when she heard about that, I'd never thought about it. She went, "That's domestic abuse." She was really, my sister, she's a smart woman. She's tough. And she said, "No, that's domestic abuse." I'd never even considered it. You know, she was just pregnant. Then she just had a little kid. And then it was all, I'll tell you what, it was always, they were going somewhere. "I'm just taking the kids to here, but you wouldn't want to come." You know, and it was that. So you were always just basically here on your own, you know. At least now, once it had split up, at least then I used to just have my kids for the weekend and holidays, you know. And I actually had that space to be a parent. I'd never been that before. You know, so now with my son, I didn't know what was happening with my daughter, but that I got clued up to that once it had happened to that. So with Henry, oh no, I've just said his name. But with my son, what I've said with that is I've always told him, because I know that the alienating parent will always use a particular way of making out that you don't love them. So I've always said to him, when he opens his eyes, he still sleeps in my bed. And when he opens his eyes, I say, "Henry, oh man," I say, "Have I told you today I love you?" And he goes, "Yeah." By the end of the day, he's like, "Yeah, about 1,000,000 times."
Yeah, you can shut up now, Dad.
Yeah. But I say to him, "Henry, look, let's call him Harry, that I love you. And if anyone tells you I don't, they're lying." That's the only thing I've said, because I thought that's what's happening. Oh, he doesn't love you. But now I've made sure that he knows that anyone tells you that I don't love you, that's a lie. You know, and because what are you going to do? They're fighting. I don't want to involve children in it at all, but that's what's happening on that side. So, you know, that puts the thing in there. He knows that I love him. My daughter knew that I loved her. You know, she knows that I love her, and that won't change.
So tell me about that then. So obviously you've got your son and your daughter, and they seem to have had two different trajectories in terms of since the split. So
it's a cult.
What's the situation with them?
Okay, so it's a cult. Remember that my ex she's got previous on this, and she had her first, who's in her mid-20s, I suppose now, is a girl. And then she, with a different dad, had a son. that son still saw his dad. She didn't make it easy for him to see her. He moved from a long way to a different county and stuff, but it didn't make it easy. But boys don't seem to fit into the cult. It's a parental alienation is often a reenactment of a trauma that the alienating parent suffered. Oh, I could go into it. But do you know what I mean? So it's a reenactment of trauma. But in this reenactment, the alienating parent can cast themselves as the savior in the role of the savior that they never had.
So you're essentially saying that you felt that she's obviously gone through trauma previously and is therefore acting as the savior that she never had when she.
And they're jealous. And they're jealous. If you've got a good relationship, like let's say, because I had a really good relationship with my daughter, essentially that alienating parent is jealous that you've got that. You know, that she benefits in that way that the alienating parent didn't benefit. Her mum and dad had split up. She told me as well that every child, doesn't matter how old you get, you always want your mum and dad to get back together. And she said that, but she'd broken every single relationship. Every dad was just a sperm donor, and so she knew personally what that hurt was, but it didn't stop her then doing that to others. Her dad left her mum. Her mum had mental health problems, but her dad left her mum and got married, and for my ex's best friend's mum, and got married to her, and they lived together.
Right.
But the best friend and my ex cannot talk to each other, can't stand each other. That's kind of what happens with borderline personality disorders as well. It's a really naughty thing that you look at.
The problem is that you've kind of got inadvertently mixed up in a sort of a washing machine full of weird personas and mental health and all that.
Oh yeah. It gets really bad, when you start thinking about it. You think, geez, this is really serious. You know what I mean?
What would you now? I mean, hindsight's always a wonderful thing. But what would you be telling yourself, your 20-year younger self? What kind of advice would you give them? And I know it's quick to sort of say, well, don't get with that person. But in general, what kind of advice would you give them? Because you said you missed that person. You wish you was that person. So what would you be telling them?
I think keep away from people that don't mean the best for you. Be like your business. What do they say? Be slow to hire and quick to fire. I think that's the best advice I'd give. That really think about it. But it's like I said to you earlier, that it's difficult, because like when people say to me, do you regret it? It's like, if you could go back, would you do it different? It's like, but for me to do that different, it's like that bit in Back to the Future where it begins to kind of disappear. And my two children are wonderful, and they're a great addition to the world. And they're both bright, and they're very handsome kids. So I wouldn't want to lose them. And there's only one mother and one father that could have made those children, so do I regret it? No, I don't think I do. I think I'd do exactly the same.
Like I said to you before as well, it's something beautiful that's come out of darkness. It's come out of tragedy. There's something beautiful come out, which are those two children, and the bond. And no matter what happens, no matter what goes on in the future, your DNA is going to run through their veins. No matter how much they're alienated and everything like that, they will still be a part of you. And I always have to try to remind myself of that. Of like, well, no matter where they are, they've still got a bit of me in there, because it's my DNA running through it as well. Now, the thing is, you are obviously still in touch with your son.
Yeah.
Obviously not with your daughter.
For now. And I'm not going to put any pressure on. Never I'm going to put any pressure on, because there's no point. This is my issue with this kind of reunification process, where if in parental alienation, if it is ever addressed, what they do is remove the child from the alienating parent for at least 3 months, no contact at all, for that child to then, and what you're getting there is a child which is being kind of forced, you know, and that's not going to work out well.
That's
And
not
let's
healthy.
say, yeah, and let's say with my son, he's come to own this space with his dad, you know, and he loves it. You know, he loves the it's boys' weekend and we do this sort of stuff. So if she did come back, there's no way that I would ever refuse it. But I have to be conscious that there is a cost as well to my son. He's got this new space where he is this, you know. It's such a terrible kind of weight that these children are carrying, you know. It really is.
Well, they're the victims, aren't they, in a war that had nothing to do with them?
They are. They're the victims, and the damage that is done to them, you know. And I think, hopefully, you know, I'll always be there, you know, for as long as I can. I'll be present, you know, for as long as I'm alive. I'll never refuse that, you know. And if my daughter did say, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, I want to go back to see dad, you know, then always my door's open, you know. And that's where you get into this ambiguous grief, you know, that no one knocks on that door, you know, that phone hasn't rung, you know, but it doesn't, so you can't close it off. When do I stop? I'll never stop, you know. When do I stop kind of hoping? Never. When they're throwing soil on my coffin, that's it. That's when that's over, you know.
Then the thing is, in the meantime, you've got your relationship with your son, and who is going to grow up to be a man, and so you are essentially wanting to set the example. I mean, what is it to you? What does being a man look like to you? Because it differs from person to person. What is it to you?
I think I don't know. I watched your video not long ago, you know, and you were talking about that, you know, and how our, you know, when we measure ourselves up to our fathers, you know, I think I try and advise my son, you know, he's only he's only young. And so I'll say that you've got to, you know, don't do this, don't do that. Just in life, I'll give him a little list of things, you know, don't do this, don't do that. Always do the right thing. We always know what is the right thing. Even if it doesn't fit us, while we're doing the wrong thing, we know it's the wrong thing.
It's a feeling, isn't it? It's like a sensation.
Yeah, we've all done it. We've all done things. You know, I look back on my past, you know, I wasn't easy, you know, as a teenager and stuff, you know. So we've all done that. I'd say.
What did you do, Tom, as a teenager?
Yeah, loads. But I'd say that so always try and do the right thing, you know. And I'd say what is a man? You've got to be solid, you know. You've got to be straight and dependable, you know, and for your kids. And it's hard, you know, because you're setting that benchmark, aren't you? You're the thing that they will aspire to, and your daughters are looking at you to see what they would accept as a partner in the future, you know.
And that's the thing. I've got, like I said, I've got 2 daughters. So what I have to try and do is try to set the example of what they should be looking for in a man, or what a relationship should be looking for. And what you don't want is for them to be, okay, well, he just slags off mum all the time, you know, because that could, like you said, quite easy could do that if we wanted to, but we don't. So we're still
really hard not to.
Example. Yeah.
It's really hard not to, you know, it's really hard. But that's the big mistake, you know. That is the big mistake, is if you do that, you know, you've got to be that. It doesn't matter what they're hearing on the other side. Don't try and counter that. Be that good, reliable, solid parent, you know, who is, you know, is all fine, and they're safe with that parent, you know. And they're safe in themselves. When I say safe, I don't mean in terms of like physical safe, but I mean they feel that safe space, that they are loved and they are appreciated there, you know. And that my son sometimes is kind of like, oh, I've got to just get something from upstairs. Can you stand at the bottom of the stairs, Dad? And I'm trying to kind of sort of say to him, look, all the doors are locked. There's me, you, and the dog, you know, and that's
Mhm.
it. And I'm trying to kind of encourage him, and he's getting way better. You know, we've been camping in the garden all half term. I've got a big garden, you know, and we've been
Mm.
camping in there, and it's just been wonderful. And I think there is such a difference from my daughter. She always wanted to do it, and we'd camp in the garden. It'd get dark, and she'd go, "Can we go back inside?" And we'd go back inside. But
Yeah.
with my son, he's just kind of like, "Oh, it's brilliant," you know.
Mm.
I live out in the countryside, so you're hearing all this wildlife all around you, you know, in the
Yeah,
night.
no, but it's pitch black as well, you know. So
Yeah, there's no street lights here, nothing. It's lovely. But I'd say that you really notice the difference in them, you know, and I think we're just, you know, somebody said, I heard that, you know, they're not our children. We're just borrowing them for a little while.
yeah.
And that they're going to find themselves, you know, and our job is just to kind of shepherd them through to this point until they can find who they are, you know, and
Mm.
to give them that safe environment in which to explore who they are, you know, and to discover who they are. And it's a privilege to us to see this and to be a part of it, you know. They bring,
Absolutely.
you know, they bring so much. And they if there's one thing in this world that holds off the progress of this terrible condition, it's my children. You know, that's it. That's what I think. That,
Mm.
you know, you've got this new I've got this new job, you know. As soon as my daughter was born, you know, everything changed. And that I was, you know, I was an artist and get to travel. British Council send you off to various dodgy shitholes around the world. And the last one, I was in Kuwait, and I was in this hotel, and I was looking out
What
the
was that like?
Kuwait.
Yeah.
A weird place. I tell you what, it's a weird place. It's like they're just building buildings that they're not using, trying to keep up with Dubai. Do you know what I mean? So they've got all these
Mhm.
massive buildings and they're not using them. It's weird. I did Dhaka as well in Bangladesh and
Mhm.
Palestine. You can't get there now. You know, I did
Mhm.
Palestinian festival, you know, and going around there as an artist. And that was quite interesting. I liked Palestine. But when I was in Dhaka, not in Dhaka, in Kuwait, it I had a little one at home, and I thought, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? It's like, what am I doing here? Everything had changed then. You know, I'd got this new
Mm.
job. My new job was to be there with my kid, you know. So yeah, it's just everything changes in your life when you've got kids. If people, you know, haven't got kids, I'd always say to be, you know, that it's just when you're ready, it's just a wonderful job is to be, you know,
Mm.
to be a dad. It changes you.
It does, because you realize there's more to life than just yourself. It's a different connection that you have with your partner. It's a different connection that you have with your parents. It is its own relationship, and it what it does is it does give an awful lot of people meaning, and
Yeah.
a purpose. And I think in a life where people are wandering aimlessly from day to day, not really knowing what's expected of them, what they should be doing, that is your meaning. And yet, like you've touched upon it before, birth rates are like ridiculously low. So the meaning of life is going, it's disappearing.
It's yeah, I think you kind of feel that there's something behind all of this, you know,
Yeah. Well, we
that
all
is
suspect
happening.
it, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And I think that there's something, I don't know, look, I could get into all of that, but
Mhm.
do you know what I mean? The birth rates are plummeting, and we're not breeding at replacement level. Haven't
No.
been for a long time. We haven't been since like the 80s,
Mm.
you know. So we're not, you know, we're as it is, we're dying out, you know, and that seems to be across the world, really. You know, this
Mm.
pretty much. It's not quite as you know, in terms of different demographics. We think that you know, that they are hitting replacement level, but they're actually not. It seems to be in the West, you know, that they're not.
Mm. Mm.
But yeah, so I would say, I tell you what, young blokes that have worked for me, I've always said to them, look, it's a when you're ready, you know, it's a brilliant thing, you know. And I've always said it that no no one ever tells you about the nightmares. You know, when you wake up in the night and you just this sudden sweating, like, oh God, because you've had some dream about your kids.
Mhm.
But that's
Mhm.
the cost of that level of love, you know.
Well, it's a commitment. It's a lifelong commitment as well, and
Yeah.
it's one that you then have I think what you call a duty. And I think having duty is something that I think is missing from a lot of
Yeah.
people's lives. I think when you take away duty and you take away purpose, you essentially just have a vacuum. And what do we fill
Yeah.
it with? We fill it in with social media. We fill it in with politics. We fill it with everything other than what we actually need.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
I think you know, yeah. So I would say, you know, best job I've ever had is, you know, being a dad. It has.
Mm.
But, you know, with this and with what's happened with alienation, you know, it's a terrible weight to carry and a loss to hold, you know, loss to kind of to take. But, you know, I always remain hopeful that things will change and that things will, you know, that it will come back. You know, I'm not going to put any pressure. There's no point in trying to do that.
No, absolutely. And I think as long as you're always in a position to allow that, that's all you can do.
No,
That's all you can
yeah,
do in the meantime. Um, you have set up obviously your own site for Deleting Dad. So tell me a bit about that, what you're trying to gather from people, because I think it's amazing what you're doing.
well, like I just thought, what I've got to do something. You know, I've got to try and do something to contribute and to try and help people and to put a little bit of pressure on an already, I suspect, creaking system, really, where there's an increased awareness to things like this. You know, Kafka's currently just call it alienating behaviors. They won't have, you know, parental alienation, but it's coming. It's getting to Denmark now as of January this year, and it's already a criminal thing in Brazil and certain states in the US and Mexico. So I'd say that there is a tide that is turning, and I thought I had to do something, and so I set up a project to I've got a history in publishing, you know, as an artist. So I set up a project, deletingdad.co.uk. My idea is that I'm collecting the stories of fathers and wider family and grown-up children as well. Anyone who submits this, it's always anonymized because it's all about protecting the anonymity of those fathers, and by doing that we're protecting the anonymity of the children. And I will publish these stories in a book, you know, that covers it, and it's all those stories of those fathers. That in a book, which is a bit different to like the comment sections, we've got the gravitas of a physical document that can be given to libraries, can be given to professionals working in childcare, can be given to teachers. There's a lot out there, but most people don't know about this. So I want to contribute something. I think that there's a writing of a balance scale, and I want to be able to put something in that other side. So anybody that any well, just check out deletingdad.co.uk, and any fathers that are going through this that we've been through, any wider family of fathers, any grown-up children, you know, they can submit their stories and, you know, and go from there. And I want to, publish a book with it, you know, and get it out there to help to put a little bit more lean on that already creaking system a little bit. So
Well,
that's what it was. I just felt I had to do something.
Well, we've already sort of talked, you know, the system is already kind of against the family unit, which is why we're trying to push back against it. And, you know, I know it's going to be anonymized, but I'm going to write in that site for you. I'm going to put my story in there as well for you.
That'd be great.
I'll be able to put on there. I want to touch upon some comments that we've had during the live stream. Okay. So we're going to provide a bit of balance here as well, as we always do. Speaking of balance, Blue Balance UK, I can't imagine what you've been through. And that's the thing. That's why we have these conversations, because it evidences to people the struggles that others are going through. Okay. And I think the more we talk about this, the more should we find ourselves in that position, we know not necessarily what to do, but how to react, how to talk about it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you are in a position that like we're in, you know, as a targeted parent, the world doesn't understand. Nobody understands it unless you've been through it. I knew nothing about parental alienation till it happened to me, and then I start looking into it. I'd say that I'm interested in it, but it's not something you would be interested in. It's my interest is shot through with my own personal sadness, you know, and my loss. So it's hard, and we can tell people, you know, down the pub or at work about what's happened, but unless they've been through it themselves, they won't know. So I think the other thing about Deleting Dad and with the YouTube as well is opening up a platform on which people can discuss, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think getting the message out is half the struggle sometimes.
And there's catharsis in writing down your story. So I knew that if asking people, you know, not asking, but opening up a platform in which people can submit their stories, there is a catharsis in that for that person who's gone through it. You know, they'll feel a bit better. The first one that I got ages ago when I set up the project, the first one, and it came through and I was so happy. I've got one, you know, I've got one of these stories. And I read through it and I cried my eyes out reading through it. And I thought, right, I had to put it to one side. I thought, tomorrow I'll look at it again and I'll anonymize it. You know, I'll send an email thanking the guy and I'll anonymize it then. Read it through again, cried my eyes out again. It's all the same story, you know, it's the same story, just with a slightly different shade to it. But it's very sad. And I hope that there is catharsis for those people in submitting their stories and writing it down, you know. Yeah. There's a bit in Elizabeth Bishop where she says, write it. She says, I just need to write it, WRITE. And in that you get, and then she says, RIGHT. So she's saying really the American confessional poet Elizabeth Bishop, that by writing it, we write it, you know. And I think that that's what it could be, you know, helping people to write things, getting people to write it down might help them.
It does, because I've always said that the brain is a pressure cooker. It needs a release valve. It needs something, because like you said earlier, when you're not working, if you're sitting there, you feel worse. It's because the brain's stewing. It's not allowing productivity or any kind of creativity coming out. So we've had a couple of evenings. So Nick Larcher, we had good evening from him. And then 50 to finish. Evening, chaps. All the best and much love to you both. Thank you ever so much, my friend. This was on when we was talking about consuming ourselves with technology. So Blue Balance says, wow, the tech angle is a very interesting topic worth a discussion. I've said before, we've never been so connected, but never so isolated from each other. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, absolutely it is. You know, what is the damage that's happening to us? You know, it's convenient and we're all opened up and we can share things like, you know, you and I talking here to these people as well that we're talking to. You know, we've never been so connected and it's wonderful. But, you know, there is another weight that we're carrying from it. You know, what is it using us for?
There is a comment that was made, which I think we can all appreciate here. I'm just going to put it on.
I can't see it. I ain't got my glasses on.
This is the greatest tash I've ever seen.
Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
That is a lot of work. Tash, I have to say. I mean, that takes some work, I bet.
Yeah, it does. Well, when you haven't got it on your head, you just think, why not go on the top lip?
It's migrated.
It's fine. I'll tell you what I've had when I first grew it and started, you know, curling it up or whatever. I've had retired pirate. My son says I look like a pizza chef, and he goes like this, right? So that's really good. I've had loads of it. You get loads of comments on it, you know.
You ever seen those places? Like, I think it's in Germany, isn't it? Like a competition where they all go there and they've got the huge, you know. There we go.
They have world tash championships. Honestly, there's a guy I watch on YouTube, and he's American. He's got magnificent.
Is that just wax then, or is it what is it used to? Yeah. Is that a daily job then of having to sort of wash it, brush it, and wax it? We're getting very technical here, I know, but I'm just interested because I think we're all wondering the same thing.
I make my own wax, you know what I mean? So you can make it out, you know, you can kind of cook it up and everything, and then you've got there's some of it's expensive. If you buy like death grip wax, it can be expensive for this little pot. So I just made my own now, and it's all right. So And then you have to clear it out before you get to bed or whatever, but it's fine. Yeah. It takes work. It takes
This is what's keeping him preoccupied, is getting this sorted out.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you want to get the full long.
I love
sort
it.
of
My son, he comes up to you and he goes, Dad, come here. I have to lean down and he gives it a little twizzle like that. He goes, right, perfect. Yeah, good. I said to him the other day, because my dad had a tash in the 80s, you know, just a standard kind of tash. And I remember when I was a kid, he shaved it off and it was like, where's my dad? Do you know what I mean? It really bothered all three of us, you know.
Have you seen those videos of like when, and I always think this is a little bit traumatic, when you see those dads who appear and their kids see them without a beard and a moustache.
Yeah, that's
and they normally cry. And I'm thinking,
yeah, so I said this to my son. I said to him, and I was like, if I shaved it off, you know, you'd hate it, wouldn't you? And he went, yeah. I says, because I had to go to a birthday party with him a couple of months ago, and one of the kids comes up to me and he goes, why have you got a tash? And I went, why not? So he just comes up to you and goes, why have you got that tash? And I was like, because I can. Do you know what I mean? But so I'm conscious that he's like, is it embarrassing, Henry? But my son, he just thinks, no, it's brilliant. You've got a tash.
That's the thing of mine. Mine is nothing like yours, but I've always had this since my kids have been alive, and I've always been mindful of, even if I did want to get rid of it, I probably can't, because then it'll be because
you'd be totally different to him. You know, it's like when my dad shaved his tash off. It's like we were all kind of like, oh, he's got no top lip or something. Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's a thing.
He's really ladling the gravy here. So much truth. There we go. There's truth. Absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why it's called Wise Words, because we want to make sure that the truth comes out. You don't always get to hear. Ben King, all right, Chris, just joined you. Wasn't aware you were live. Well, yeah, that's where advertising comes in and marketing, but you'll remember next time. Don't worry. Right. Blue Balance, Tom speaking a lot of sense. Good skills, fellas. Thank you ever so much for that. This ties in with what you were saying earlier. So Blue Balance also says, my son's 23 and I still tell him at every opportunity that I love him and I give him a hug. If I can corner him long enough, children need that, in my humble opinion. Absolutely. So like you said, you do that every day.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that weirdly, it seems weird to us, but children don't actually know that their parents love them unless we tell them. This is what I've seen with studies, you know, that so we do have to tell them. Do you know what I mean? That children don't know. So it's important that we do, you know. My kids will always say that there's two things you can't talk about without dad crying. It's kids and dogs. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, so I'm known for being soppy like that. So I've always told them, you know, I've never held back telling them that, you know, I love them. And it is weird. That fella's right. Even with his kid in his 20s, you know, they don't know unless we tell them.
And what about in a film, if the animal dies, do you get upset?
Yeah, I can't watch a film like that.
I've got a wonderful dog rather than the animal. That's the problem. You know,
I've got a wonderful dog. Yeah. I can't do that. You know, as soon as you've got a dog film and it gets that sad music coming on, that's it. Turn that off.
Right, just to provide some balance, I think it's because when we were talking about playing the long game for all this, Jim Joe, that's right, I'll read it for you. Never mind your doors open. You need to make it happen. Being passive like that with your own child will just be translated as you can't be asked. Trust me from experience. Walk up to her door and knock. Perhaps you want to get your perspective of why that probably wouldn't work in your situation.
Well, just going up and knocking on the door.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've got to wait for her to come to me. I've got my son. I bought him a little dumb phone so that he can phone me anytime, because it's been, you know, all of the avenues of communication have been shut down. You know, it gets worse because my ex has actually, it's just the most bizarre thing. It's all performative. Like you said in one of your things about having to do handovers in car parks, you know, that's a performative thing. The performance is so that the children are forming an idea that dad's in some way dangerous. You know, you are essentially being.
This pisses me off, Tom, because I tell you why. The amount of comments I had on that video of, well, there must be a reason why you're picking them up from there. Like, no, there isn't, because there wasn't a court order. There was nothing in place. I've never done anything whatsoever. It was a decision she made, and because she had the children, she's got the children. she's got the keys to the castle, so she can
Yeah,
decide.
it's a performative thing. And it will be the same thing, like I've said in other stuff, that there's this false narrative, and that false narrative takes constant tending. The truth can walk naked, but there'll be a false narrative. And this is where it becomes a little bit of a precarious situation for an alienating parent, is that when they're talking to a teacher, they'll have one particular way of, we all change the way we talk if we're depending on the audience. And so their lying is always open to collapsing under its own contradictions. They'd be telling their friends and family one version of it, and then when they speak to a teacher or a school or a professional, they'll change it some other way. It's all, the weird thing is, alienating parents it's all quite predictable. They all do it. It's all pretty much, you can second guess what they're going to do next. So the car parks, I've been through that too. And you had to go into a car park and hand it over. No reason, but it's just to put you in a position that you're something like Hannibal Lecter behind a security screen, behind a glass screen in a Supermax prison. You're just in Morrison's car park, but that is essentially what they're putting on a performance of, for the children. It gets worse. So then I got a thing, only wants to doesn't want to deal with emails anymore. It has to be non-direct communications. Emails are non-direct communications, but I have to email her sister, and then her sister passes it to her, and then she passes the answer. It's all a performance.
That's what I had, Tom. I had.
So can I knock on a door? No way.
No. I had, because I used to say, well, look, we've still got kids. We've still got to get on with this. We've still got to deal with it. Can you not just keep me in the loop with what's going on? And her suggestion was to have a communication book that we would pass over every 2 weeks. And I said, no, we are not children. We're not having a communication book. And like you said, it's performative. But the problem is, especially when you're telling your story on places like this, people fill in the blanks, but they fill in the blanks and they come to 2 and 2 plus equals 5. Okay.
Yeah, of course. It's
mad.
It is mad. And I think, like we said, only people that have gone through it will ever kind of understand it. So I can understand people looking at it and going, well, it must be something you've done. That's, I've said in some of my videos on the channel that, the difference between justified estrangement and parental alienation, this is a brainwashing. These children are essentially caught in a kind of cult dynamic, in a hostage situation, and it's not anybody who's not been through this doesn't have that point of reference. So they'll always be looking and going, well, it must be because of this or because of that. I think there are so many of us. When I first found out, I don't know if I'm repeating myself, when I first found out, with that infographic, and I said to my dad on the phone, I live a long way away from any family. And I said to my dad about what was happening and parental alienation. And he said, I think that's what's happened, what my mum did to my paternal grandparents, and he would have been maybe 70 at that point. It was a few years ago, maybe 69, something like that. He said he didn't know anything about it. Then you kind of look, and other people were saying, I think this family member's been doing that. I think it's everywhere. And I think it's been going on time immemorial. It's always happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has happened before, because we have got Lee, who's commented, who was my first guest for the podcast, who was in the same position as you. So the alienated dad, he said, agreed, just knocking on the door doesn't work. My daughter has been educated from age 10 for 9 years to turn her back on me. How do you break that? So
you can't. You have to wait for her to come to you, and you need to be that solid. This is how I view it. I'm not, when I say you, I mean one needs to. And one needs to just make sure that they are doing everything they can to look after themselves, so that should that day come, that we're in the best position to provide to that child what they need,
Yeah.
A safe parent. Weirdly, the targeted parent is the safe parent.
Mm.
You know,
Absolutely.
I go
And
with Dr. Craig Childress. That's the book, Foundations. That's really the Bible. It's there, I think, but it's next to my bed. But Foundations, and he doesn't use the term alienating parent. He calls them the narcissistic borderline parent, because I think it's about 93% of alienating parents suffer from one of two personality disorders, and those can come together in the same person. You know,
yeah,
cluster
absolutely.
B. It's a cluster B situation. In there with psychopathy.
We've got, would you be interested in hearing about dysfunctional relationships between men and their own fathers and the implications of that dysfunction on my own parenting? Jim Jam, if you want to get in touch, mate, me old fruit, me old mucker, then my contact email address is in my channel description. Please just get in touch. And he also says, I'd be very interested to see your art. What sort of art was it you was doing?
Written art, not visual art.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So do you know what I mean? Like a published writer. But I'd say that, so that's they used to, you know, fly halfway around the world to go read some poems. That was it, you know. So it was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was good fun. But again, that's my old self, really. My old self.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just finishing off, so the alienated dad says, deleting dad, we need to speak. You can get my number from Chris. You can. Yeah, well, I can. I'm a bloody matchmaker here now. This is.
I would love to speak. Yeah, I would love to speak. Do you know what I mean? And in you know, in whatever way, we need to speak to each other. You know, all of us. I think men. You know, we need to have that. I've got so much out of making, you know, building friendship with different men and stuff. And in part of that group that I go to, you know, I've got so much out of it. And I'd love to speak to people. And if I can offer anything to anybody, you know, I know that this is tough. Yeah. Don't be one of those 14, you know, that's the key bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, God bless you, mate, for jumping in for today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and great work that you're doing. And obviously, thank you for jumping in and watching this as well. If you've been in and watching and putting your comments on, it's important we have these conversations. And Tom, you've certainly done that today. And thank you ever so much for doing
that. No, thank you so much to everybody. And thank you to you as well, Chris. Do you know what I mean? Because inviting me on here is, yeah, excellent. Thank you.
No problem at all. And listen, if you do want to be on the show, like I've said before, the email address is in the channel description. Please get in contact. And obviously, also, if you are feeling like you need to talk, reach out to us. We're here to talk at the end of the day. Right, folks, thank you. See you again soon, and look after yourselves. Thank you ever so much.